The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 888. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 888, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state government, appropriating money for the environment and natural resources, second engrossment.
Recognize the member from Roseau, Representative Fabian, to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is the Environment, Natural Resources Policy and Finance Bill. I have to start out by saying some thank yous. I'd like to thank the members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the members of the committee for serving on the committee, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the great team that we have. We think that we have the best team in the House. I know we'll get some arguments about that, but that's okay. Amy and Harry and Kaylin and Brad and Janelle and our pages. I saw Adam upstairs earlier and Annika. Thank you for all of your really great work early in the morning, getting the coffee pots plugged in and all of the materials that we need for running our committee. And by the way, speaking of materials, Representative Marquardt, I just wanted to say thank you. You know, one of the priorities for my committee this year, our committee, is forestry. And when you hand out a 416-page bill, that is about the best thing that we can do for the timber industry in the state. So thank you. Appreciate that. With that, members, I'd like to introduce or talk a little bit about the bill and give you an idea of what we're doing. Our target was $293 million, and one of the things that we wanted to do, as the Chair Drazkowski said, was to slow down the government spending spree. And that's what we're trying to do in this bill. In Section 1 of the bill, you can see that we're funding the Pollution Control Agency, we're funding the DNR, Natural Resources, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, the Parks and Trails Council and the Met Council, the Conservation Corps, the Minnesota Zoo, the Science Museum, Explore Minnesota Tourism, and some administrative things for the School Trust Fund administrator and what they do over there. Also in the bill, some of our key provisions. One of the things that we did in 2015 was we passed legislation and was signed obviously by Governor Dayton that we hope will shed more transparency on how some agencies and government work, in that we required the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to budget by their divisions. In the past, when they've been doing their budgeting, they budgeted by different areas: air, land, water, environmental assistance, and cross-media. And what we wanted to do is to shed more transparency and more accountability. We wanted them to budget by divisions within the agency itself, and they have 9 different divisions within the agency, and we'll get more into that later, I would guess. Some of the things that we have for reforms in here along with that, as you know, I've tried for years to speed up the environmental review and the permitting process. And contrary to what some people have been saying, we are not lowering any environmental standards, and we are not reducing public comment. But I'm sure we'll probably talk about that today as well. We are doing some reforms with the Environmental Quality Board. One of the things that I paid serious attention to is the comments from people and so forth. Initially, when we brought our bill out, we were going to eliminate the EQB. Instead, what we're going to do is kind of do some reforms in how people are appointed to the EQB, having them appointed by congressional district, and trying to get more statewide representation on to that board. We're doing some things with the sustainable forest, the timber harvest analysis. We're modernizing some of the data systems that they have, trying to help the DNR and the state of Minnesota reach its goal of getting to 1 million cords of timber each year to meet the demand of the industry. We are raising the park fees, entrance fees, from $5 a day to $7 a day, and from $30 a year to $35 a year. We are also we're increasing the SCORE grants. For those of you that have counties that participate in the SCORE grant process, we have made a significant commitment to them to help them meet the goals that they have put forth. We've increased funding to the Minnesota Zoo by about $1 million over the biennium. I'm happy to say that we had a provision in the bill to address the concerns of several members on both sides of the aisle. Representative Clark Johnson was one of the people who was very interested in the Fort Ridgely golf course, and we've been working behind the scenes, but we do have something in the bill with the DNR and the Fort Ridgely people, and I think we have come very, very close to an agreement there as well. For those of you that like to hunt deer with a muzzleloader, Representative Nash, we've got a provision in the bill that's going to allow you to use your scope on your muzzleloader. You won't have to detach it and stick it in your pocket once in a while. I'm just kidding. We're also going after people who do excessive poaching. We have the governor's provision in here with regards to gross over limits. They do not represent sportsmen and women across the state when they're doing stupid stuff when it comes to taking animals illegally. We also want to look seriously at what's going on with so much of the wastewater treatment facilities in so many small and large cities all across the state of Minnesota, trying to help them out with some of the regulatory climate there, and hopefully can return some common sense to what we're doing there as well. Mr. Speaker, I could go on for a long time about the bill, but I'm sure there's a lot of interest in doing some other things. Just a couple of things I'll mention real quick too. We do have some language in here to try to fix an extremely serious problem in rural Minnesota, and that is dealing with the buffer issue. And I'm sure that Representative Torkelson may address that as we proceed here. Another real emerging issue for me personally, I was hearing about the situation with the freeway landfill, and we're trying to address that as well. For those of you in the mining industry area, the DNR is responsible for I won't say protecting, but defending their position in court with regards to what's going on there. We've got money so that they can continue that. We do also have the no net gain policy in the bill. Again, for the people in northern Minnesota, I think I know every single county commission that I represent has a no net gain policy in place, and Representative Drazkowski speaks about that, and we can do that more later. The demolition landfill situation has been a very serious problem in rural Minnesota. The idea that they're using guidance documents and unadopted rules for permitting has been very concerning, so we have some things to deal with that as well. We also have things in here, if you're interested in LUST, which is an acronym for the Leaking Underground Storage Tanks. We've got some language and then also some funding for that program as well. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll turn it back to you, sir.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Eklund moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment, and the amendment is coded A27.
I recognize the member from Kuchiching, Representative Eklund, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. This amendment deals with a law that was passed last year, Sophie's Law, very good law dealing with safety on boats with enclosures to help with carbon monoxide poisoning. I'd like to thank Representative Hertaus for working with me on this amendment. The trouble with the Sophie's Law, in my district I have 6 commercial houseboat operations, and the new product that's required to be installed by May 1st may not be there in time for them to do it. So what we're doing is asking for a 5-month extension. A lot of people don't know the commercial houseboat operators are probably more highly regulated than what the law calls for. They all have carbon monoxide protection on their vessels, and they have that because their insurance companies require them to for liability reasons. The trouble with it is they're not marine grade. So we're asking for this extension for 5 months until they can get the new marine grade units out and available, and I'm urging everybody to a green vote. Thank you.
Discussion on the A27 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Eklund. As Representative Eklund has mentioned, he has worked with me, and I appreciate that. Members, the implementation of Sophie's Law, there is equipment that's available to be used. Much of what was recommended according to the American Boat and Yacht Council standards, the product that's available has to be hardwired in. That's not particularly a problem for many of the smaller watercraft that requires this enclosed space to have it. And an enclosed space, according to Sophie's Law and according to the Yacht Council, requires an area that includes a galley, a sleeping area, and a head. So with that, understanding that a lot of these large houseboat operators, many of these vessels are 40, 50, 60 feet long, trying to get power to some of these things and pulling wire is really quite a challenge. And the reason that I'm willing to work with Representative Eklund is their industry is promising some non-hardwired battery-operated devices that will be able to be installed that are marine compliant. So the industry just needs a little bit of time to catch up. There's one battery-operated one that we're aware of, but in a commercial application like this, it's not as though they're not going to have CO detectors, but in fact, they have them, but they're just not marine graded. And so I'm willing to work with the author, and I would urge a green vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on the A27 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the A27 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A29.
Recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hanson, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it begins. We start dealing with the funding bills for all the agencies. This chamber just passed a huge tax cut bill. And Representative Fabian in his introduction talked about this being a policy and funding bill, and that he was trying to cut back on spending. He's actually cutting back on funding and adding a lot of policy. I don't know how many members actually have the bill in front of them. There's 32 pages of appropriations and over 80 pages of policy. A lot of policy in here. And some of that policy is quite magical. If you look on page 32, the first section appeared, I think, in the Ways and Means Committee. Hadn't been heard in committee before, just appeared. There are pieces in the policy that my amendment, the A29 amendment, what we're doing is removing the policy from this finance bill. There is no change in the finances in the amendment. The park fee that Representative Fabian mentioned is retained and appropriated for the parks. But the 80-plus pages of policy are gone under this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for a roll call on this amendment.
Roll call has been requested.
Come on.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, what is some of this policy? Representative Fabian mentioned some provisions in the 80-plus pages. There are provisions that are from the chamber bill that we heard in committee, where the chamber testified. We have some provisions from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. We have some individual projects that came in, a whole smorgasbord of policy in here. The governor has indicated that he does not want policy in the finance bills. To get the finance bill, the funding bill for our environmental agencies, Department of Natural Resources, Pollution Control Agency, Board of Soil and Water Resources, to get this bill signed, take out the policy. So here's your opportunity to move forward. I would ask for a green vote.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Representative Hansen talked about, there's a lot of magical things in this bill, and I thought it would be helpful for those watching and other folks in the chamber who maybe haven't had a chance to get through the 120-ish pages. So I just want to take this opportunity to walk through what those magical provisions were that we never heard in committee previous to the markup of the bill. Section number 24 is a Gull Lake pilot study, which was not previously introduced, was new when we heard the omnibus bill. Section 26, Fort Ridgely State Park regarding golf carts. Section 28, Fort Ridgely State Park regarding no fees for golfers to pay to state parks. Section 36, changing the prescribed burn definition, never talked about that one in committee either. Section 50, which is actually the language from House File 1807, which was introduced February 27th, but we never heard that one. Section 63 regarding portable hunting stands, that was brand new. Section 71, which is actually House File 256, regarding rules limiting use of lead shot, introduced January 17th, but we never had a hearing on that bill either. Section 72, an elk management plan. Section 85, which is also from House File 1807, introduced February 27th. Section 87, technical evaluation panel disclosure of interest in wetland bank. Magically new, never seen that one before. Sections 89 and 90 regarding hydromechanical non-consumptive diversion of surface water, introduced February 6th. Hadn't heard that one before. Section 113, modifying membership of Environmental Quality Board. Section 114, eliminating duties of the EQB. Section 121, regarding silica sand. And sorry, it's a long spreadsheet, so I got to go down here. Section 123, again about prescribed burns. Section 125, more about the EQB. All things we didn't hear until the omnibus bill was dropped. Section 126, House File 1560 regarding Sand Dune State Forest Management Plan, introduced February 22nd. We never heard that in committee. Section 127, which is actually House File 332, introduced January 19th. Never heard that bill previously. Section 128, Hill Annex Mine State Park Management Plan, brand new, magical. Section 129, PCA base budget report. And then in Article 1, we added some funding for the shooting sports facility. That was House File 1170. We never heard that. It was introduced February 13th. Section 98 was House File 702, Judicial Review of Agency Actions, introduced February 1st. Never heard that one until the markup last week. And Sections 98, exception for mining and industrial permits, that was added in Ways and Means, so I didn't actually get to comment on that one in our committee. And then finally in Article 1, we also have some no net gain regarding lands and $4 million from the closed landfill investment fund, also added in Ways and Means. My reason for pointing this out is that this is all almost entirely policy that was not discussed in committee, not gone through the normal process of allowing the public to know what's going on and allow them to give us feedback and testify to what they think about these things. The vast majority of these provisions were added in the omnibus bill, which was emailed out at 12:51 on a Thursday, and we took hearing the next morning. So just wanted to point out that, you know, we can do the right thing and leave this policy stuff out that didn't go through the normal process, so folks were able to know what was going on. I think that's important. So just wanted to speak in support of Representative Hansen's amendment.
Further discussion on the 829 amendment. The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And I sometimes think that the public watches us in this hall and thinks, oh, the two parties are at it again. There's a lot of disagreement. But I think if they reflect on the campaign trail, they find that frequently there is agreement. In my district, in my Senate district, the League of Women Voters and other organizations hold forums where candidates come together and candidates, you know, the Republicans and Democrats talk about the issues and share their ideas. And a lot of times I walk away from those forums and I'm struck by there is a lot of agreement. There is some commonality. And in each one of the, I believe in each one of the forums that I was involved in this fall, both my opponent and the Republican candidate for Senate talked about, when asked, how would they improve the legislature? And both of them talked about making the omnibus bills smaller, that this was a priority for them. Now, I don't know if they were the only Republican candidates talking about that, but I do recognize that they were, at least in my district. And when they made that suggestion, I said, you know, that's not a bad idea. I think it is a problem in the legislature, and I'm willing to work on that when I get to St. Paul, should I get to St. Paul, because I know that they would be doing the same if they were here today. This amendment is a chance to do that. It makes sense to divorce the policy from the finances. This is a finance bill. We're talking about financing our efforts to deal with the environment in Minnesota. It's an important issue, and we should focus on that. And as Representative Becker-Finn said, there's been some policies in this bill that haven't been vetted in committee. I thoroughly enjoy the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Representative Fabian, you're a fun chair. You're good in the morning. You bring good coffee. We've got time to get together and really look at that. And even if we didn't do that, there would be an opportunity to bring a separate policy bill to this floor. It's the right thing to do. It's the right way to govern. And really, it's an idea that came from my opponent and my senator's opponent during the campaign. I think you should take that GOP position today and vote with Representative Hansen. Vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, you know, this debate reminds me of my aunt she was a little on the wild side, and she would give me advice, but she would always say, do as I say, not as I do. I've looked back to the 2013 bill that was produced by the other side of the aisle. I believe Representative Wagenius probably was the chair then. That bill was 216 pages long and contained 159 pages of policy. They outdid us by twice. Mr. Representative Johnson, we've already taken your advice, and we appreciate it.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought you read the bill, Representative Torkelson. When we did policy, it was only because it had finances involved.
Further discussion on the 829 amendment. The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, just to clarify a few things, I don't think that, well, first of all, our bill is about a little over 100 pages. We just got done having an amendment that wasn't vetted, okay, in the public, didn't have a hearing. In the tax bill that we just saw, there were 30 different amendments. 19 of them were brought forward by the DFL. Where was the public input on those? That's what I would ask. We did have a hearing. The bill was posted. We took several hours of testimony. As I've said many, many times before, there's not very many people from Kittson County and Roseau County that are going to come down here to testify unless there's something extremely important for them. And they trust me, their legislator, to be their testifier for them. So with that, I would encourage a red vote on the Hansen amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on the 829 amendment. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, we often have heard in committee about a person's district, a district, that we represent our district, and we all represent our district. We all care deeply about our districts, but we're also state representatives. Our responsibility is to think about the good opportunities for the state, not just for our district. And so it's important for those Minnesotans, all Minnesotans, to have opportunities. And I think if we all did what we always used to do, we'd never grow. We'd never change. I think It's a new day in our country, and it's a new day in our state, where Minnesotans are expecting us to adapt to current realities. And in this bill, it is the old way of doing things. A lot of policy. Again, policy that is quite magical, just appearing. Now, some of that policy, we may not even know what the cost is. Representative Wagini has talked about costs in the past. There are provisions in policy that were heard as amendments. And some of them will have costs that we do not know of. This moved very quickly from Wednesday, Thursday to Friday, and then to Ways and Means, and got tweaked with there. Policies added that I doubt if there's even a fiscal analysis of them. So the way to deal with those is to set them aside. Set those 80-plus pages of policy aside. Take a good look at them. Some of those policies are clearly veto bait. They'll kill the bill if they stay in it. So again, to have that opportunity to move this forward, the funding bills for the Department of Natural Resources, the Pollution Control Agency, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, the Minnesota Zoo, the Minnesota Conservation Corps, the Conservation Corps of Minnesota, the Science Museum, and tourism. The tourism budget's in here. But instead, it's chock full of policy. Vote green on this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 56 ayes and 76 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hornstein moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment, as follows, and the amendment is coded A30.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Hornstein, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. The 830 amendment relates to an issue that has arisen over these recent years with Volkswagen Corporation. Now, Volkswagen was caught in what one press report, I believe, accurately calls a cheating scheme. What they did is they installed software in 590,000 vehicles that was designed to exaggerate the degree to which air pipe emissions were being reduced, when in fact they far exceeded air quality standards. And so they were caught, and they admitted their guilt. And so now they have agreed to pay out to various people who have been directly impacted, auto dealers, consumers, and even states like Minnesota, a total of over $3 billion. And so Minnesota is getting $47 million as a result of this settlement. It's fantastic. $47 million coming into our state from a private entity that basically cheated the public. And so this amendment is needed because in our bill on page 97, we have line 7, that basically says that this settlement money may not be spent until it's specifically appropriated by law. Here's the problem with this, members. There has been a very clear pathway for how this money can be spent. There is a trustee that has been assigned, an independent trustee that is helping to facilitate folks getting this money. And there are very, very clear stipulations about how that money is spent and who spends it and what it can be spent for. And so what we had testimony from the PCA in our committee that this language would seriously jeopardize the $47 million coming into the state. Why would we do that, Mr. Speaker and members? Why would we take the risk and jeopardize this money that can go for a whole range of very worthwhile projects, which in a moment, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a moment, Representative Becker-Finn will give some detail about. And so, members, this is very, very important because $47 million is not chump change. This is very, very significant. And it's coming to us, it's not coming from our taxpayers. It's coming from a private entity that has been caught cheating. So let's not jeopardize $47 million that can come into our state for very important clean air projects. I would like a roll call vote on this, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hornstein.
And I would strongly urge a green vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to speak in support of Representative Hornstein's amendment. So I wanted to talk a little bit for folks about how this settlement came about. So essentially Volkswagen was sued and there was a private settlement about how this money would be spent. And it's a pretty long document. This is just part of it. Obviously it's pretty, I could go really far in the weeds, but I won't. But the important thing is that in order to actually get the funds, it's not like Volkswagen sends Minnesota a check for $47 million and we get to do whatever we want with it. There are specified purposes that the funds can be used for, and the trustee, once they're completely set up, would approve each one of those individual things. It would have to meet the delineated purposes that are already in the settlement. And the other way that the settlement is set up is that each state that has this designated amount under the agreement that they would potentially have access to, the governor of each state is to appoint an agency that will act as the beneficiary that will help as the go-between for the funds. And in this case, the governor has chosen our pollution control agency, which makes sense. And in order for them to get the funds, they have to be certified. And in order to be certified, they have to file a form. And the form requires them to make some statements about their ability to use the funds. And if they're not able to rightly turn in this certification form not later than 60 days after the trust effective date, each entity that fails to timely file such certification shall be an excluded entity and shall be permanently enjoined from asserting any rights with respect to the $47 million. So it's just a really risky thing that we're doing here by trying to get the legislature involved in a private settlement that's clearly set up with how the funds will be sent and who has the ability to divvy out those funds. And part of the certification is that the MPCA would have to sign off that they have the authority to sign and be bound by the certification without limitation. And this provision would essentially be a limitation. And if we miss that 60-day window to be certified, that's it. There's no appeals process. It's done. You don't get the $47 million. And, you know, I understand that we as a legislature like to have control over a lot of things, but at a minimum, we should take this out, allow the MPCA to be certified, and then continue to have conversations about the best way to spend those funds. So encourage a yes vote.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would encourage a no vote on this, and I think really it's important to understand here that in the other chamber, this is a bipartisan position. In one of the former majority leaders over in the Senate seems to agree with the provision that is in our bill at this point in time. The Wilmington Trust Company has been the designated trustee on this. These are very experienced people. They did the GM bankruptcy, they did the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, and the ability for the state to review this is not necessarily limited in the agreement. So I would urge a red vote or a vote on this and proceed with the $47 million and provide for our legislative oversight. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson.
Mr. Speaker, members, Representative Hornstein is absolutely right on this. Things are very specific. I happen to be involved not so much in the $47 million, but I was given information about it because my wife and I purchased a Volkswagen diesel just before the lawsuit or the agreement was reached. The car was 2 weeks old. We had a couple hundred miles on it. And as consumers, there was a very specific timetable, and this is all dictated by the courts. And what you've just heard described from our side of the aisle is a confirmation of that. Now, we had certain choices as consumers. We had a certain timeline that we had to follow in making our decision, all dictated by the federal courts. And this $47 million is in that same category. We were even getting copies of information as soon as that was determined that the state of Minnesota, as consumers, would be getting $47 million. I joked with my wife, it'd be nice if we could get a slice of that as consumers, but that's for the state. That's to address clean air issues. And I think we would be foolish to put that $47 million at risk when we could use it for other good reasons. So I would encourage a yes vote on the amendment.
Any further discussion on the A30 amendment? The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members and Minnesotans watching at home. If you listen carefully, Representative Uglum said that we, the members of the People's House, should vote against this because it was bipartisanly supported in the upper chamber. That was the reason, because this provision is bipartisanly supported in the upper chamber. We often talk about process here and policy and process, but let's talk about people. Why are states getting this money? Because Volkswagen had fraud. They purposely manipulated their software to violate the air quality protections that their vehicles had. So why are we getting the money? To make up for that fraud, to actually, the money is supposed to be going to improve air quality. Not to balance the budget, not another pot of money that we can take somewhere for something, sometime, somewhere. But it's supposed to go to be for Minnesota and all the other states to improve air quality. Improve air quality. I think Minnesotans want improved air quality. Air pollution has a cost. It has a cost on health care. We need to improve air quality. We need to support people. We need to keep politicians' hands out of this pot of money. Representative Hornstein is correct, and this amendment deserves a yes vote.
Recognize the member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, no one's disagreeing that Volkswagen did a horrible thing. Nobody is suggesting that this is another pot of money for the legislature. Okay? Nobody is suggesting that we're going to use this for something else. Simply what we are asking for in this amendment is some sort of oversight. To somehow suggest that, quote, politicians shouldn't be involved in this. We represent our constituents. There's a lot of my constituents that would rather have me having some say in this than having a bunch of bureaucrats doing this. So I would encourage a red vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think we need to be clear. This is not a choice, as I understand it, Representative Becker-Finn's remarks, Representative Hornstein's, about having, our hands on the money and controlling it, et cetera. I mean, basically, this is money that's coming to the state because there was this cheating by the car company. The money comes to our state. There's some specified uses for that money. They happen to be, as Representative Hansen said, making sure that the air is clean. But the thing is, in a way, it sort of doesn't matter. According to what's been said here, we either get the money for those uses and just let the money go to those uses, or we have a high risk of not getting the money at all. And the only argument I've heard against that is that the Senate, apparently, some senators had to say something about that, and I'm not sure that we want to pay that much attention to that in this body, correct? We haven't had any kind of particular information come from the other side to explain as to why that's wrong. So the choice is we get the $47 million dedicated to making sure that our air is clean, or we don't get it at all. And that seems to be the risk. And so in my mind, let's have those funds come in, let's have our air be clean, and let's support the Hornstein amendment.
Recognize the member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Becker-Finn yield for a question?
She will yield. Representative Sundin.
Thank you. I understand there's some deadlines involved here as well, and I'd like you to address the number of 47 million. What happens if we don't meet the deadlines for setting up distribution of these funds? And what happens if other states don't meet the deadline?
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if we miss the deadline, the 47 million that's been set aside for us gets divvied up to other states who did make the deadline. So essentially our funds could go to Iowa and Wisconsin and any of the other states who would timely get their state beneficiaries certified. If we timely file ours and get certified properly, it actually could end up being more than $47 million if there are other legislatures who are similarly playing games with getting certified. It could end up being more money because it could be redistributed to us if we were properly certified.
Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just wondering if we could find a reason or a way to have Representative Uglum and Representative Fabian go help the other states with this process.
Further discussion on the A30 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess we're disagreeing, and we can agree to disagree on this process. But the fact is, the settlement does provide for a wide menu of options for improving air quality. And we feel, certainly on this side of the aisle, that the legislature should be included in taking and determining these options off of this menu to include and provide for better air quality for the state of Minnesota. And I think that's only correct. And I'm sure that the funds are scheduled by what the governor said to go to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. The arbitrator will distribute the funds, and I think it's only proper that the legislature look at how these funds are going to be used. And actually, quite honestly, everybody here in this room probably has some great ideas that we could include in a situation like this. And to have it limited and to have it rushed, I don't think is proper. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Well, Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Fabian, you said that we needed some sort of oversight. The oversight is actually being done by the U.S. District Court of Northern California. They specifically said in Section 6 of the agreement that they were retaining jurisdiction over the trust. So they will make sure that the trustee follows exactly what Representative Baker Finn said, that the governor chooses the delegated authority, and the delegated authority, he cannot say to the trustee that the delegated authority, PCA, is legally bound to distribute the funds if the legislature can supersede what is going on. We just don't have the jurisdiction. The U.S. District Court, Northern California, has retained all jurisdiction, all oversight.
Any further discussion on the A30 amendment? The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
And I'll just note, members, that we can provide ideas about how this money is used. We can require the department to be reporting to us about how the funds were used. We can all have all those mechanisms. But going beyond that poses a great risk of losing the money altogether to Iowa, Wisconsin, and other states. Let's not take that risk. Vote green on this amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 56 ayes and 76 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Becker Finn moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A31.
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker Finn, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and you'll notice that I'm speaking a lot is because I care about the environment. So here we go with the next one, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment would remove the section in the bill that prohibits the DNR from adopting rules that would restrict lead shot. This is one of the sections that was included in the omnibus bill, but that we didn't hear as a standalone bill in the 3 months that the Environment Committee met earlier this year. To clarify, I'm talking about lead. The same lead that is a neurotoxin, a poison that causes irreversible brain damage. The same lead that infants are tested for, the same lead we don't want in our house paint or in our water pipes, the same lead that poisoned the people of Flint, Michigan, the same lead that leads to brain damage and death for our national symbol, the bald eagle. Lead is poison, we know that. Yet we pretend that when we put it in a gun that somehow it's different. It is not. It is still toxic. Now, many Minnesotans do understand this. I know I've received many phone calls and emails, and hopefully many of you have as well. The Trump administration does not understand that lead is toxic, but that's not really surprising because I think Minnesotans understand taking care of the environment better than most. So let's be smart about this. This is not an anti-hunter thing or an anti-gun thing. It's an anti-poison thing. So there are effective alternatives to lead ammunition. It's time to stop stubbornly covering your ears and pretending that lead when in ammunition is no longer a poison, because it is. So a yes vote here is a yes vote for preserving safe hunting for future generations, and a no vote is a vote in favor of poisoning our food and our wildlife. So I encourage a yes vote, and Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion on the A31 amendment. The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And wanted to go through a few things. And Representative Becker-Finn, I read your weekly update not long ago where you renamed a couple of my bills. So I thought I'd have a little fun with yours as well. I'm going to name this either the Anoka Unemployment Act or the Battery in the Landfill Act. And here's why. The city of Anoka is the home of federal ammunition. And Mr. Speaker, if Representative Whalen would yield to a question, I have a question regarding the federal employees.
She will yield. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Whalen, I toured that with you not long ago, and I think I heard a number, but I wanted to confirm. How many employees are employed by the federal ammunition plant?
The member from Anoka, Representative Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Nash. Federal employees, 1,425 people.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Representative
Speaker.
Nash.
And members, if this goes forward, there's a couple of consequences that I'm not sure Representative Becker-Finn is thinking of, and actually I'm pretty sure because it seems like it's a fairly callous approach. I talked to several folks at the Anoka plant, and I bet you didn't know, members, that the federal plant uses reclaimed car batteries to get the lead that they use for their ammunition. So if we decide to do this, one of the major employers in Representative Whalen's district and indeed in our state, because that's a lot of folks that they employ, are not going to be employing those people anymore. And the batteries that they have, Representative Becker-Finn, I asked a federal employee what would they do with those batteries, and they said they would probably go to a landfill, and I'm sure you don't want that, or they could go to some close by country, maybe Mexico or somewhere where I'm sure they're going to handle those far better maybe than the federal plant does in their environmental handling process. But more importantly, Representative Becker-Finn, I found out this also. I believe it was March 2016 at the DNR headquarters. It was 3/10/2016. There was an environmental impact meeting there. I think his name was Steve Merchant, works for DNR, environmentalist, led a panel of folks and said that there was no population-wide impact on birds or animals or other things that were being harmed by lead. So members, I'm going to urge you to vote no on this because I really like the federal employees, and I'm sure Representative Whalen would like those folks to stay employed by the federal ammunition people. We're all about Minnesota jobs. I think one of our parties has labor in their name. I think it's yours. And I think that we really need to stand up for the people of the federal plant and hunters across Minnesota who enjoy the opportunity to hunt with lead. And there has been shown by one of our own DNR environmentalists that there's no population impact. And members, if you're going to go ahead and cast a green vote on this, and some of you will, I would like you to think of those employees that are at the federal plant that are going to be out of a job. And maybe I don't know what your plan for that is, Representative Becker-Finn, and then think about all those batteries that they recycle, Representative Becker-Finn, all those batteries that are going to go to the landfill. So members, vote red.
Recognize the member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, sorry about that. Just a quick reminder, this legislation, I think is important to really keep an important issue like this in legislative hands. you know, we're always dealing with agencies and agency rulemaking. We just passed another bill that we tried yesterday to try to rein some of that in. I think this is important. This is important to hunters. This is important to folks within your community. And it's most important to keep this decision. This is current rules, that this is not moving forward. And I think we need to keep that in legislative hands. And I would also urge you to vote no. Thank you.
The member from Dakota, Representative May Quaid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Nash, I think maybe you should spend more time reading the newspaper instead of Representative Becker Finn's email updates, because if you read the Star Tribune, I believe yesterday, you would know that the company you're talking about already started laying people off. And for the same reasons that we're talking about right now, demand is down for these types of bullets. And if you're very concerned about employees in this state, I would just make sure that as we micromanage the administration and cut thousands of jobs from our own state government, you would have the same care for them as well. So I think this is a good bill, or a good amendment, excuse me, Representative Becker Finn. I got a lot of emails from my district about this. Lead is a toxin, it is poisonous, and it's irreversible. This is a good thing that we can do for our environment. This is a good thing that we can do. So thank you for bringing this amendment. I urge you to vote green.
The member from Anoka, Representative Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Nash, for your comments and your question. I just wanted to say regarding the environment, Federal Premium is an avid supporter of the environment, and as many of you know, if you are a hunter or if you know people that hunt, my father was an avid hunter, loves the environment, cares for, stewards the environment. We just have different ideas of how to go about that, and as Representative Nash alluded to, there are a lot of different studies out there and disagreement within the scientific community on the effects of lead in the environment. And I can tell you that if the science was 100% and everyone was agreed, hunters would be the first to say, yes, absolutely, let's do everything we can to make sure we stop this. But that's just simply not the case, members. And so just wanted to put that out there, that federal and all hunters are avid supporters of the environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm appreciative of the discussion here. Representative Nash, I am a big a fan as anyone of renaming bills with fun names. But I do want to point out that federal ammunition actually does make a lot of different types of ammunition with non-toxic substances. So those folks at federal would still have jobs. They could just be making our shot and our ammunition from less toxic substances. And I think that I wouldn't underestimate this industry's ability to make changes and improve. I am a hunter, so a lot of hunters do agree with me that we can move in this direction and do something better for our environment. Science agrees across the board that lead is bad. Lead is toxic, it's a neurotoxin. Again, you don't want it in your homes. Why would we want it in our environment? So that's what this is about. And to clarify, this isn't banning all lead ammunition. This is removing the section that would ban the DNR from restricting lead shot. So you can still buy as many lead bullets as you want, you just don't need to put them in our waters and in our wildlife. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the A31 amendment? The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I think it's important that we pay attention to language and the language we use. Representative Nash, you referenced the hardworking employees of federal ammunition, and I think we empathize when there are layoffs of hardworking employees. But then when it came to the DNR employee, you referred to them as an environmentalist. Oh my God. You referred to them as an environmentalist, not hardworking. I think our public employees are hardworking. And again, I think we're going through changes, market changes. So Federal Ammunition was a local company, got bought out by a big multinational corporation. Made a business decision not because of Representative Becker Finn made a market decision, and they just laid off 110 people. And that's bad, and I'm glad that we have the programs available to deal with those unemployed workers. Why is this amendment here? And we talked about this last year in the previous legislature. We're talking about rulemaking that the Department of Natural Resources has done using science on selected public lands called wildlife management areas, lands that belong to all of us. So when we hunt on those lands, and those lands where there may be wetlands, or maybe they're wet part of the year. Now back 30 years ago, the federal government required steel shot for waterfowl hunting. Steel shot for waterfowl hunting. Did you hear that, Metza? Steel shot for waterfowl hunting. So you're seeing changes now with copper shot, nickel shot, other types of metals, and the market is changing. More people are using it, and it is available. So what really is going on here is the Department of Natural Resources is applying science, looking at the lands that are public lands that belong to all of us, where if lead is being used, it doesn't go anywhere. It accumulates. And if those lands are wet, there can be Minnesota animals or migrating animals that can ingest that lead, and we have the science to know what happens from there. So using science, the hardworking Department of Natural Resources employees, hardworking employees, have listed some of the public lands, not all of them, but some of the lands where lead shot could be restricted. And what the provision is that's in the bill, in the 80-plus pages of policy, the provision that's in here that Representative Becker Finn is trying to remove says, stop it. We know better. The politicians in this room know better than the science. We want you to stop that. We can't stop change. Can't stop the science. The science is going to continue to come in. And you're going to have mothers who hunt who are going to say, I want alternatives. And they're going to make those choices. And the market is going to change. We have to be ready for that. And pretending that change doesn't happen is not the way to do it. We need to support the Becker Finn amendment.
Discussion, the lady from Hennepin, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to thank Representative Becker Finn for bringing this bill forward, this amendment forward. And it really is a very important issue for a couple of reasons, and I think she's raised all of our consciousness about it. In another committee, we heard from individuals who work at Wabasha at the Eagle Center, and I asked them if they were concerned about lead poisoning of their eagles, and they said yes. Every single day they talk about lead poisoning of their eagles. And so they try to help people make the connection between this source of lead poisoning for the eagles. The other thing is, I grew up, my dad was a deer hunter, we had venison, and I didn't really realize until I did some research after hearing this legislation that when lead gets into a deer, it often fragments into very little pieces, such that you cannot clean it out of the deer. You can't wash it away. It stays in the deer. And that means that's another source of lead poisoning for people. So I think it's really an important bill. What's so important to know is that there's other types of bullets that can be manufactured. It's important that hunters know that and that the workers who have these jobs at stake know that. And I just thank you again for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Discussion. The gentleman from Blue Earth, Chairman Cornish.
Real quickly, Mr. Speaker and members, this is a thinly veiled attempt by the anti-hunters. And saying this isn't anti-hunting is like saying the upcoming Fisher Amendment isn't anti-trapping, but we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Discussion. Representative Metsa from St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I do think Representative McNamara has brought up a good point before he retired last year, and it's issues like this, which could be in a rulemaking process and a reasonable thing, and there's been a lot of fear on both sides about, stopping one type of ammunition from being used. Pink camouflage came up last year and was ranked by some groups as a Second Amendment issue. And I do have an issue with that, and I do think that we need to have that discussion moving forward. However, there is fear in an all-out ban or not ban of something. I would be more in favor of an agency being able to propose a rule, and then we vote through the legislative process on the merits of that rule. However, today I am going to support a no vote on this amendment, and think that we do need to move forward and have a more reasonable conversation in general with some of these groups in how we're ranking this, and then look at the actual legislation or rules being proposed by agencies as they're coming forward in the future and make sure that they're reasonable. But I am tired of pink camouflage coming up 5 times and getting ranked on it when there's other things tied in the bill. And I think this conversation applies to both sides of the aisle, that we'd like to be able to look at things individually for what they stand for and the merits on which they're brought forth, and would urge a no vote on this, but think that conversation should happen moving forward. Thank you.
Further discussion to the amendment. The gentleman from Dodge, Chairman Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, this is just another veiled attempt to put more regulations unnecessarily on the people of Minnesota as they enjoy the great outdoors and their shooting sports and their hunting. I have, and my family has eaten probably 50 or more deer in our lifetime, and I don't know how many pheasants, grouse, ducks, and other things, and I've got a lot of friends who have. I've had pellets in my mouth, and you spit them out. It's not the end of the world, and I'm not dying, and maybe I'm not the smartest guy, but I don't think I was any smarter before either. I'll tell you, members, the only known toxicity from lead in a shotgun is when it's coming out of the muzzle at about 1,200 feet per second. Please vote no, members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 50 ayes and 82 nays, the amendment does not prevail. There is an amendment. The desk clerk will report the amendment. Sundin moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A32. The gentleman from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We heard reference to some bad policy that's in this bill, and I'd like to point out one of those sections. This amendment deletes Section 126 of the bill that has to do with the Sand Dunes State Forest. Section 126, found on pages 110 through 111 in the bill, prescribes how the DNR manages the Sand Dunes State Forest. The section in the bill requires the DNR to develop a forest management plan for the Sand Dunes State Forest and requires the plan to be approved by the county board. It also prohibits for 2 years further conversion of the land in the state forest to oak savanna and requires for 2 years that only native prairie seeds be used. Notification of prescribed burns and other requirements. Members, we heard testimony in the Environment Committee from various citizens opposed to the section. The DNR also has concerns. In general, there have been objections to Section 126 because the forest management should not be prescribed in statute. Forest managers need to maintain the ability to make decisions that are best for the land for the people of Minnesota. Secondly, it disrupts the existing forest management planning process, which involved 6 stakeholder advisory group meetings last year and are continuing this year with a formal public comment process. And thirdly, this section greatly reduces the Minnesota DNR's professional discretion to manage our forests and will set an adverse precedent for legislative micromanagement of our state forests. Truer words could not be spoken. This sets bad precedent. There's something fundamentally wrong with county boards having the approval and oversight over science-based policy making. I ask for a yes vote that would affirm the deserved trust in our professional forest managers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll stand for questions.
Discussion. Discussion to the amendment. Representative Newberger from Sherburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is not as clear-cut as Representative Sundin would have you believe. Let's talk for a minute about the Sand Dunes State Forest. The Sand Dunes State Forest is about an hour and a half north of here, and it encompasses most of Orac Township and parts of Big Lake Township. There are hundreds of families who live in and around the Sand Dunes State Forest. Members, they've been there for generations, longer than there was a DNR, and before there was even a state forest. These families were living there, making their livings, raising their families. Along comes the DNR. About 4 years ago, they made a new plan to change the way that the Sand Dunes State Forest was supposed to be managed. Simply put, members, what they wanted to do was clear cut up to 49% of the Sand Dunes State Forest. Clear cut it. They had very little regard for the residents or the people that lived there, and they started their plan with very little input from anyone. They had one big community meeting. I attended that. And that's when we caught them in their first lie. First lie was, oh, we're going to clear cut the Sand Dunes State Forest because it's for the kids. It's for the children. It's a school trust land. So when we asked them to put up on the board where they were clear cutting and where the school trust lands were located, funny, but they really didn't match up real well. So then they reorganized, re-scrambled, re-spun the whole thing, and they came out and they said, well, you know, Representative Newberger, what we really want to do is we want to go back to the original forest. You know, back when God created it. You know, like back in 1860. Wow, really? Okay. I think God's been around a lot longer than 1860. We asked them this question. What's the very first word in the name of that forest? Sand. What kind of microorganisms thrive in sand? Oak wilt. Oak wilt. It's an enormous problem. It kills hundreds, thousands of acres of oak trees. So now we want to go ahead and plant oak trees in sand. Oops, you don't think that'd be a problem, do you? Well, we brought that up too. That's the second lie we caught them in. Finally, we got the truth out of them. And the truth was this. They want to go and clear cut it so that they would have pollinator habitat. Pollinator habitat. They want to clear cut potentially up to 49% of the Sand Dunes State Forest for pollinator habitat. Members, that's putting bugs over people. Sorry, members, but in my book, people rank higher than bugs. So what happened? About 2.5 years ago, we passed a law, and we had an amendment. We passed it, and we said, you know what? We're going to stop. We forced the DNR to stop. No new clear cutting. None. You're going to have to come to the table. You're going to have to sit down with the people that live there and the stakeholder groups, and you're going to have to hammer out an agreement. You're going to actually, hey, state agency, you don't get to dictate this time. You have to work with the people. Wow, what a shock, what a concept. But guess what? They were forced to do that. So we started our community meetings 9 months ago. 9 months ago, every month, I was there with at least 50 residents from that community, 3 or 4 hours at a stretch. And we'd go through that grinding process that the DNR put us all through. 7 months into the 9-month calendar, we gave them the heads up. We said, hey, the law says that you have to work with us. We have to have a plan that we can all agree to. Where's the plan? This is 7 months into the 9-month stretch. DNR looked at us and they said, we'll have it. We'll get it done. Don't worry about it. We're the DNR. We'll get it done. Great. We get into this legislative session, and I'm contacting the DNR. How's the progress on the plan coming that you're supposed to work with us on? It's coming. We're having some problems, but we'll get it to you. 5 days before the final meeting that we had with the DNR, I called in the stakeholder groups, I called in the DNR, and I called in Chair Fabian, and we sat down in the room. We said, hey, 5 days. We need to have that plan. Where is it? They said, oh, okay, we're working on it. It's great. Okay. 5 days later, we show up for the final meeting with the DNR, where they're supposed to roll out this plan, where they show how they're going to work with us. And you know what they said? After 4 hours, actually it was closer to 5. This was the culmination of 9 months of DNR work. They looked us in the eye and they said, well, we're sorry. We don't have a plan. We didn't really want to bring one out because this was their word. They said, we didn't think you would like it because it had too many pages and too many words. How insulting is that? How insulting, members, is that? So that's when I put my foot down and I said, and I got big feet. I got size 14 double E's. And yes, I do. I put my foot down and I said, you know what? We're going to fix this legislatively. You had 9 months. You had 9 meetings. You had plenty of warning, and you didn't get the job done. So members, here we are. And what is this big, evil, terrible plan that Neuberger is bringing before the legislature? Oh my gosh, bar the door. Here comes the Russian army. Everyone be afraid. Well, let me tell you what this evil plan is. It basically says this. It says, stop any new clear cutting for at least 2 more years. I figured if 9 months wasn't enough time for the DNR to get all of their, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be nice, to get all of their things in order, then maybe 2 years might be enough time. And then how about a little bit of oversight from the people that live there, like the county board? We got folks that have lived there, like I said, for generations. So we're going to bring these people into the equation too. What else is so evil about this plan? Oh, we have to give residents 40 days notice if they're going to burn. Why is that so important? Because they weren't notifying people properly. They weren't doing it. And if you have hundreds of families that are woven in and out between the Sand Dune State Forest and you're just going to go burn big sections of land, it might be nice to tell the people you're doing it. So giving 40 days notice is not egregious. What else did we ask them to do? We said leave the school trust lands alone. Whatever it is in this plan, whatever it is, they can continue the school trust lands as they always have. We don't touch the school trust lands, period. We don't touch them. So there's no meddling there. And then finally, members, there's a road that goes through the southern side of Orac Township. If you look at a map, Orac Township has lots of north and south access points, but it only has 2 primary east and west access points for emergency vehicles. And what we're doing is in this plan is we're giving an easement back to the township because guess what? The DNR wasn't taking care of their road. So I guess that's the big evil plan that we want to pull out of the law. So members, What the DNR tries to do in Jim Newberger's district today is probably something they're going to try to do in your district tomorrow. Well, enough is enough. So please vote against this amendment.
Discussion. The gentleman from Pine, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Newberger did attend some meetings there in Sherburne County. There were about 29 stakeholder groups involved in that, and I found a record of the people that were involved in the advisory group, and I found only 11 families involved in there. I don't know how many hundreds live around there, but there are only 11 families that are reported here. And you did come up with some recommendations here that the DNR is going to implement. And one is use science-based adaptive management tools to inform decisions on restoring, protecting, and managing rare plants and wildlife. That's part of the plan that Representative Newberger actually participated in formulating. So, and then also, one of the recommendations is collaborate with neighboring landowners to address buffer requests and aesthetic concerns along the shared boundary prior to future timber sales. So that would probably alleviate the timber cutting concerns that they had. So the list goes on, but I'll just remind the body that Representative Newberger was a part of this process, and like we all should do, and participate in those decision-making processes in our communities. But to delay this 2 years is not a plan. To scrap it is not a plan. The DNR has a plan for preservation and protection of rare species. To stop is not a plan. All they're trying to do is protect the flora and fauna in the sand dunes forest. So I'm not going to request a roll call vote on this, but thank you for your time.
Further discussion. The gentleman from Pennington, Chairman Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Representative Sundin would yield to a question, please.
The gentleman will yield. The gentleman from Pennington.
Representative Sundin, you've not requested a roll call, so does that mean that this is a rhetorical amendment?
The gentleman from St. Louis, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Speaker. No, it's not a rhetorical amendment. It's just a darn good one.
The gentleman from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just kind of interested in this topic. Obviously, this isn't something I've been super involved with. I have actually been to Sand Dune State Forest a few times. It's a great resource for our whole state. It's a really cool area. I would encourage anybody in this chamber who hasn't been there before to go visit it. It doesn't really feel like you're in Minnesota somehow, because I don't know, it's not a whole lot of areas in the state that have sand dunes. You know, I'm just looking at section 126 here, which the Sundin amendment would get rid of, and it does say that it requires, you know, the commissioner to develop and submit a forest management plan for the Sand Dune State Forest that has been approved by the county board. And I'm just wondering, I guess first of all, if Representative Newberger would yield for a question.
He will yield. The gentleman from Hennepin.
Thanks. I'm wondering, are there, I was a local elected official. I was on the city council for a few years, and county board people come from all sorts of backgrounds. I'm just wondering, I have a couple questions. First of all, is it common? Are there other examples of our state lands, our state forests, our state parks having to have management plans approved by local officials? And then is there anybody, I guess this would be Sherburne County, is there anybody on the Sherburne County board that's a forest manager?
The gentleman from Sherburne, Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Freiberg, for your question. Most of the board members either live in or around the Sand Dune State Forest. They have families that have lived there for generations. So to imply that they might be stupid is, I would say, out of line, number one. And number two, with our own residential stakeholder group, we have retired foresters who are citizens who are working with us on our side to lend technical expertise. Not only that, Representative Freiberg, but we have we have people in the natural sciences who work for the county that would lend their input. And if you think that the county board would just simply make some type of arbitrary non-science or non-fact-based decision, I think that's an irresponsible assumption. These folks are going to do what's best for the community, and the dynamic that you're really striving for here, the dynamic that you seem to be trying to hit but you can't, is the fact that this isn't your typical state forest. Many state forests, and I would like to say the majority of our state forests, do not have such a large population of people interwoven amongst the forest property. We have, if you look at the map, it is a real collage of private and state and federal land. So the dynamic here demands citizen input. If you have a state forest in let's say Chair Fabian's district or Representative Sundin's district or Representative Eklund's district, if you have a state forest in those areas, oftentimes there are very few people. You can have hundreds or thousands of acres of forest with no one living nearby. So having people involved in the process when people live there, that's a good thing.
Gentleman from Hempel, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just a little taken aback. You really heard something that I'm pretty sure I didn't say. In fact, I believe I prefaced what I said by saying I spent some time on a city council myself. So, I mean, if I was calling anybody stupid there, I guess I would have been calling myself that as well. I'm just a little concerned about the precedent that we're setting. I guess I was asking for an example of another instance where something like a forest management plan is actually of a state resource, where there's a local government given essentially veto authority over that. I didn't hear an answer to that question, so I guess that will influence my decision on this amendment.
Discussion, the gentleman from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and fascinating discussion. I'm going to try to maybe read Representative Freiberg's mind. I'm not sure if I can do it, but try to determine that intent maybe. Not really. Members, let's talk about what happened in the committee and people from Representative Newberger's district. This was one of the magical provisions that appeared at the end, but there were three different groups of people, I believe, three different people, and there were several of them that actually were able to make it to the committee on very short notice and testify against this provision from the district. Not from my district, not from Representative Sundin's district, not from Representative Wagenius's district. They were from your district, Representative Newberger. And so I too am concerned about citizen involvement. It's pretty rare to have, on very short notice, people show up and say, stop. And I'll give credit to Representative Fabian. We tried to do an oral amendment, and you took that. And at the time, Representative Newberg said, no, don't even do the oral amendment, which we did not prevail on. Because the testimony from people affected came at about 8:30 p.m. when the deadline was about 5 p.m. to have amendments in. So there's a lot of precedent here, members. Legislative plan writing for natural resources. So I'm not sure if you want me writing natural resources plans for state forests. I'm not sure if all of us take our election certificate as a green light to go forward and override a process that involves public input. I think this is important enough to require a roll call, and I would ask for one.
Roll call. I'm being requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The gentleman from Dakota.
Further discussion, the gentleman from Sherburne, Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. Representative Hansen, let's get the facts straight. We exhausted this issue last session. Last biennium, we had the Sand Dunes State Forest hearings. You were there, and the majority of your members were there, and we brought in residents from Sand Dunes State Forest. It was a very long, drawn-out, and exhausted hearing. So to say we haven't heard this before is simply untrue. That's number one. Number two, Representative Hansen, you said just now that there were only 3 people that showed up from the district who testified against this language. I would challenge you to go back and check your facts before you start talking about it on the floor, because none of those people live in my district. They are from other parts of Minnesota, and they were representing conservation groups. They didn't live in the district. So check your facts before you start talking about this to the public. That's another thing. And then finally, Representative Hansen, you said that this was jammed in at the last minute, and that it was because of your amendment that these, or your request that these people even got to speak. Well, Representative Hansen, if you go back and check the witness or the testifier list, I think it was the 4th or 5th person was one of those people that you mistakenly labeled as living in my district. He was supposed to be there, but he never showed up. He never showed up. He had plenty of time. He had all day. He stroked in at the last minute. And so to paint that picture is inaccurate as well. And finally, Representative Hansen, the attitude that we get here is one, members, frankly, that I find quite reprehensible, because last session, your amendment on this floor was to change the name in a language that we originally passed from stakeholders to special interests. What an insult to the families that have lived there for generations.
The gentleman from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Well, members, I had mentioned earlier that words have meaning. And Representative Newberger, last year was a different legislature with different members, different committee makeup, different people. Point one. I think the record can show what has been said and what hasn't been said. And that I was referencing the process on a vote. And I was acknowledging the chair's work to allow the vote, which we did not prevail. I think, members, it's really important, and I've made the speech and I'll keep making the speech about stakeholders versus special interests. The point I'm making about the 3 people, and I said people and groups, if you'll listen to what I said, people and groups, is that on very short notice, this is what was rare and this is what's unique. On very short notice, for the amendment being posted, people made it here to testify. And I don't think we should ignore that. I think it's important for all of us to be careful on interpreting what everybody's saying and projecting what we think people are saying. We can check. That's okay. I don't think this does any difference to the policy that's in front of us. The policy that we have legislators getting involved in writing resource plans. And I think Representative Sandin's amendment, taking this out of the bill, is important, and I would ask for a green vote for doing that.
Discussion, the gentleman from Pine, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple more comments, and I think I've had about enough of this one. But I think it's just absolutely incorrect. It would be lazy, it would be irresponsible for us to abdicate our state's responsibilities to protect our natural resources to a county board. If we do this with the DNR on the forestry, can we do it with the DNR on fish limits? I just heard from Representative Eklund that the fish limits, walleye limits on Rainy Lake are four walleyes, if I'm correct, okay? Can we change that at the county board level as well? I don't even know if we can do this. Thank you.
Discussion. The lady from Mille Lacs, Chair Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a no vote on this amendment because we need a cooling off period. I was a part of the stakeholder group, attended not all of the meetings, but certainly at the beginning. I was shocked to find that it was not an intimate meeting between those who live in the Sand Dunes State Forest, who had concerns, and the DNR and Representative Newberger and me, but it was a variety of almost special interest groups, as Representative Hansen has noted, stakeholders who had an interest very specifically in the Sand Dunes State Forest, but it didn't address the immediate issue that had been a part of the excuse me, legislation. And that disappointed me greatly. The DNR was off on its plan. They just wanted acknowledgement. And I have my issues with the DNR, as you all know, when it comes to Mille Lacs. So I saw the same thing being repeated here. These people were giving input, at least those that we expected to attend these meetings, who were definitely being impacted by the decisions that were being made by the DNR and their projected plan and what they were out there doing, and threats of clear cut and other removal that just absolutely was not necessary. So members, this amendment needs a no vote. We need a cooling off period. These people need to have their voices heard, and the DNR needs to listen to them, because otherwise we build this divide between the DNR and the people. And for me, who represents Lake Mille Lacs, I can't tolerate that. That has to stop. We've got to be working together. So a cooling off period is good, and what Representative Newberger has in the bill is going to help us reach that. So please vote no on the amendment.
Discussion. The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 54 ayes and 79 nays, the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Fisher moves to amend House File Number 888, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A33.
The gentleman from Ramsey, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to present the amendment tonight, but first I'd like to call for a roll call on this amendment.
Roll call having been requested. Are the 15 hands seeing 15 hands? There will be a roll call. The gentleman from Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm bringing forward this bipartisan resolution here. I know that there are people on both sides of the aisle that are supporting this. What we're looking at is this will change statute to allow Minnesota to join 22 other states that support private property rights and stronger requirements to obtain clear permission from a landowner before setting traps on somebody else's property. Currently in Minnesota, traps may be set on any private property unless it is posted as no trespassing, or unless the property is already in agriculture in terms of being land that is cropped or grazed and showing signs of tillage or fence for livestock. However, in many parts of our state. This is not agriculture area, and there are many people who have got private property, and for them, that would be a burden. To be posting no trespassing, they have to post their signs annually. They have to be in letters at least 2 inches high, and they must be posted every 500 to 1,000 feet to protect their property from people who are coming out and setting traps. In 22 other states, people recognize that private property rights require that before a trapper sets these traps, he consults with the landowner. This is just something that is common courtesy, it would seem, that in Minnesota, where we're Minnesota nice, before you go on a person's property, you'd first check to see if it's okay. You would never think of parking your RV in somebody else's land without asking for permission first. You wouldn't think of dumping your trash on somebody else's property without asking permission. And you wouldn't think of going forward and storing any of your other property on a neighbor's land without first asking permission. And so what we're asking for is just a common sense approach that we have here in Minnesota, is that before a trapper comes across, that they ask for permission. And that's just to set their traps. This would not prevent any trappers from crossing land to get from one parcel to another to check their traps. We just want to make sure that we're respecting the private property rights that we have in this state.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment. Oh, that has been withdrawn. To the amendment, to the Fisher amendment. Discussion. The gentleman from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1996, my mother-in-law passed away, and for several years, my father-in-law was in quite a funk until he got 2 cats, and they really brought him around. And frankly, I don't even like cats, but they did wonders for my father-in-law. Right up till the point where he found one of them in a trap, dead, and this was after about 10 years, and nobody had talked to him about being on his land and trapping, and it was a devastating experience for him. So I will support Representative Fisher's amendment.
Discussion to the Fisher amendment. The gentleman from LeSueur, Chairman Cornish.
Mr. Chair and members, this is a bad amendment, and it is an attempt by PETA and other people that are against trapping. Trapping right now, or trespass, is recorded under 3 different statutes, under 609, 9700, and 8400 in the DNR statutes. And we haven't messed with it very much for decades. It's been in existence. This would start a real, and I hate to use the cliche, slippery slope, but it would. Right now, you can go on anybody's land that isn't posted, if it's woodland, and hunt deer. And you can hunt coyote, you can hunt just about anything. And so this would be singling out trapping. Now, the problem with this is when I was a game warden up north, you can go for literally miles and all there is woodland, and it has to be posted if you don't want people on it. Problem is when you don't post it, you can go on it if it's not posted, but under this law, you would almost have to have a plat book and go property by property, and some of them are only 40 acres wide. And so, excuse me, in most of these places, or a lot of them up north, you've got an absentee owner. Somewhere in the cities, somebody owns a 40 acres or 10 acres or 80, and you'd have to constantly be checking under this one who has got that land. It would almost completely shut off trapping for Fisher and Martin, everything else. And if you have ever been up to my room, it's one of the most photographed rooms. Everything in there is either shot, ran over, or trapped. If you pass this bill, I'm only going to have a half-full room in the future. So anyway, back to seriousness, this would basically shut off trapping in northern Minnesota. Right now, if they don't have a sign on it, you can go in it, and that's the way it should be. Why single out trapping and talk about dead dogs? I mean, you could go on the property and shoot a deer and it would die somewhere, and if you didn't find it, you're going to find a dead deer. I mean, that's part of hunting and trapping, is you're just going to have a certain amount of loss, and it's tragic when it's a pet. But don't completely overreact and react to the anti-trappers who want to shut off trapping with this veiled attempt. It just wouldn't work up north, and you're going to be hurting a real sport up there that some people actually make their living off of in the winter by trapping. So it's a bad amendment, and these statutes have been working fine for years, and all of a sudden this red herring comes up because somebody doesn't like trapping.
Discussion, the gentleman from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if Chair Drazkowski would yield to a question.
The gentleman from Winona will yield. The gentleman from Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, I think of you as a particularly fierce defender of private property rights, for which I commend you. And this seems like this would be particularly supportive of private property rights. I'm just wondering if you could share your views about this protection of the rights of these private property owners with the body.
The gentleman from Winona, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Pinto. Yes, strong defender of private property rights, as many people in this chamber are, and I share Representative Cornish's sentiments.
The gentleman from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess that confuses me, Mr. Chair Cornish, because it seemed like this would provide greater protection of the property rights of the landowner. And I understand what Chair Cornish said in terms of the history of things, but I guess I'm just trying to understand in what way this would be protective, defeating this would be protective of property rights. In what way is it supportive of the property rights of the landowner to have somebody else come on and place these traps, et cetera? Wouldn't we want to protect the rights of the property owner in that way? If Chair Drazkowski will yield.
The gentleman will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Pinto, as Chair Cornish mentioned, a property owner can place no hunting or trespassing signs around their property and remedy the situation and have their property rights protected. I think the amendment is problematic because it also limits the ability for landowners and hunters to or trappers to simply contract and reach agreements on their own. So it interferes with that ability. So if a landowner wanted to bestow permission to trap on their property to a trapper verbally, as I understand, this amendment precludes that. And so that's problematic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd say I certainly agree, Mr. Chair, with your reading of the amendment. And I suppose that too is very protective of the property rights. We know who owns the land. We can check the title. You know who owns the land. That's in writing. The problem is the interloper who comes on and sets the trap can say, "Oh, I had the verbal permission." So it seems to me, Mr. Chair, and the body, that if we want to be protective of property rights, the thing to do is to make sure that the person who has the ownership of the land, and we have the paperwork to show it. The only way somebody else come in is if they can also get written permission to show that they're allowed to be on. Certainly they can have a contract for that, an agreement, whatever it is. But it seems like if we're going to be protective of private property rights, as I know many members of the body are, we certainly would want to adopt this amendment. I'd urge a green vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Scott, Representative Lunan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I pulled up the hunting and trapping regulations. I actually for 27 years have taught youth gun safety and am familiar with the regulations, having taught them and had to live by them. And on page 6 it states very clear that not only does the landowner have the ability to post the land, but the leaser of the land, which could be the local farmer or any manager of the land, to do that. It's a very simple process. It happens a lot. I know that as a hunter, someone from out of town or trying to utilize certain land, it's very difficult a lot of times to determine who owns the land. That was in an earlier bill we talked about of absentee landowners and some of the taxation issues. So we've kind of touched on what the problem is right now, and so I think we should vote no to this amendment.
The lady from Dakota, Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This year I have heard so many inane things and this discussion happens to be one of them. You're trying to tell me I own land. I have to put a sign on the land saying nobody has the right to do something on the land. I mean, that is totally backwards from everything that we've known and lived forever, as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen anybody have to put a sign up first to keep people off their property. I'm voting yes with Representative Fisher.
The gentleman from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to clarify something. My father-in-law both hunts and traps, or he did in his youth. And so he is not anti-trapping or anti-hunting. I believe you know him, Representative Cornish. He's in your district. In fact, I'm pretty sure he votes for you. We don't agree about everything. But the idea that can somebody come in and picnic in your front yard? I know he told me a story about a farmer where somebody came in and just started picnicking on his land. And the following week, he gathered up his family, went into town, and found the guy's house and started a picnic in his front yard. And guy walked out and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, you're picnicking on my yard. I'm going to come picnic in yours." We have property rights, and they shouldn't have to be posted every single time. People should have common courtesy and respect and ask before they come on your land.
Discussion to the A33 amendment. Further discussion. The gentleman from Kitson, Representative Chairman Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Interesting discussion. I'm a trapper. I'm an avid trapper. I don't have as many critters in my possession as Representative Cornish has, but make no mistake, members, if we're really concerned about private property rights, this should not be limited to trapping. This should be about hunting. It should be about picnicking. It should be about everything else. This is, in my opinion, this is an anti-trapping amendment, and the trappers in this state do a very valuable service controlling predators. If you like ducks, if you like geese, if you like ruffed grouse, if you like pheasants, if you like your puppy dogs, we've got to control predators and so forth. And the trappers do a valuable job. And I encourage a no vote on the Fisher Amendment. Thank you.
Discussion. The gentleman from Ramsey, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'd like to encourage a yes vote on this. I want to remind people that there is a little bit of difference between trapping and hunting. As a trap is set out there and just left. It is not manually overseen at all, so it's real easy for animals that are not supposed to be trapped to be caught in them, versus hunting, where a hunter is very careful about what they're shooting at. And as a result, you don't have the same problems inherent with hunting as you do with trapping. And a big reason this comes up is because of the people that I've heard from my district who are concerned about the private lands that they have north and the fact that they keep on losing their pets on their land to traps that they didn't want there.
Discussion. The clerk will take the roll on the A33 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 76 nays, the amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments to the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 888, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. The lady from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There are a lot of things in this bill that would be worth commenting on, but I'm going to just, for now, talk about the Chamber of Commerce's provisions in this bill and the freeway part, landfill part of the bill. Right now, Minnesotans have the ability to weigh in on permits to pollute and on environmental impact statements where the project might affect them. In the name of efficiency, the Chamber of Commerce wants to take away the rights that citizens have now. It certainly is efficient. It's not fair. When I was going through the Chamber of Commerce's provisions, I quickly picked out 7 provisions where Minnesotans' rights were taken away. So let me go through them really quickly. So if somebody wants to write their own permit to pollute, what's the consequence of that for citizens? There's no provision of who would respond to any comments that were made by citizens. But I think the more difficult one for citizens is if they wanted to challenge an EIS written by the proposer, they wouldn't have any right to see the underlying data. And they wouldn't have any right because the underlying data isn't subject to data practices. On the other hand, if the PCA or DNR wrote an EIS, then the citizens would have a right to see that data and challenge it. So that's one. Another is that a person seeking a permit to pollute will get to see a draft of the permit. That person seeking to pollute will get the draft, but the citizens who might be impacted by the permit, they don't get that same right. That seems unfair too. There's another provision in the bill that allows businesses with enough money to pay for an expedited hearing process. This really cuts out small businesses. It's kind of a double whammy for small businesses in this bill, because if you let people have money get ahead of the line and put small businesses behind the line, that's one of the half of the whammy. But the other half of the whammy is that currently you are cutting the money that is used to subsidize permits, particularly water permits. So a small business now will be way in the back of the line. One of the things in this bill, it says affected citizens can't bring a contested case hearing regarding a permit to mine unless they own adjacent property. The person, one property owner, no longer has rights. There's another provision in here that says industry could write its own wetland replacement plan. And another provision, when you marry them up, says that if the sites are identified in an EIS, they would be automatically given, thereby circumventing local control or local folks who've been working on wetland replacement areas. Another of the provisions says that permits need to start at the same time an EIS starts. So now citizen comments would not be relevant because the permit is already being written. The comments will come too late. And then in the EQB, as you were so-called reforming, you took out the ability to have citizen task forces and cooperation with regional development commissions. That's the 7 I picked out. To conclude, let me quote Representative Nurnberger. Having people involved is a good thing. He said that not too long ago on this floor. So on to the provisions about the freeway landfill in this bill. What you're doing in this bill is creating a legal morass that opens the state's checkbook and says to lawyers, have at it, with absolutely no guarantee that the landfill will actually be cleaned up. So how did you get to this point? So about 25 years ago, the Pollution Control Agency determined that a bunch of old landfills were leaking a toxic mix of stuff into the groundwater. PCA also figured out about what it would cost to contain that leakage for all those landfills. They told us, and not surprisingly, that the longer you waited, the more costly it would be to contain the leakage into the groundwater. What was really surprising, though, was the other thing they told us. And that was, in order to find out who benefited from using the landfill and who would be responsible for cleaning it up, it would cost $400 million. That was in 1994, $400 million. So the landfill cleanup bill that we enacted then said that if a landfill owner, and I think we have some maps coming around, if a landfill owner wanted to voluntarily come into the landfill program, then the state would pay for covering the landfill, cutting down the leakage, putting in some monitoring wells, and any other kind of engineering that needed to be done. At that time, we gathered enough pots of money to pay for the cleanups. But what the bill and what the law right now says, that the legislation did not agree to pay lawyer fees. It turned out that 109 landfill owners decided to join the program. No legal fees needed. If we can find the maps that we had, we'll get them handed out. Oh, they are out? Oh, excellent. So you can see the maps of where those 109 landfills are. One of the things that legislators understood, that covering and doing the monitoring wells was not a one-time cost. So that's why legislation was created to take care of these 109 landfills as long as they needed care. And you can assume that that's going to be for a long, long time. So over the years, 109 landfill owners voluntarily joined the program. One, the owner of the Freeway landfill, who continued to make money because he had a transfer station there, decided not to join. PCA begged him to join, literally, but no. So the Freeway landfill now is a federal Superfund site. And the federal government sent out letters to folks who might have benefited from the landfill. What the federal government wants to know is who are the big beneficiaries, like haulers who made money hauling garbage to the landfill, and folks who might have put hazardous waste into the landfill. So that letter went out to a bunch of people, and I understand the concerns of folks who put in small amount of garbage many, many years ago. But unfortunately, this bill does not solve their problem. The bill spends a tremendous amount of money without a guarantee that the landfill will be cleaned up. Specifically, what the bill does, it indemnifies everybody, including haulers who took the waste to the landfill and those who put in hazardous waste. So now, if you use the word indemnify, that means that state taxpayers will pay for all the cost of the cleanup. no matter what the federal government chooses to charge. And the state will also pay legal fees and any other costs forever. That's what indemnification means. Back some 20 years ago, PCA figured out that the legal cost would be the same amount as the cleanup. Most everybody agreed with that assessment. In the Freeway landfill case, the PCA estimates that the cleanup will be $67 million. Double it, you get to $134 million, but you really don't know because indemnification means everything forever. But here's the key. There's no appropriation in this bill for the indemnification, this $134 million. If there were an appropriation, the bill says it comes from the account that is reserved to maintain these 109 landfills that voluntarily chose to come into the program. Even so, the account we have now isn't enough to pay for it. Remember the letter that Speaker Daudt sent to us about our salaries? He was quoting the Constitution that says we can't agree to spend money until it's appropriated. That's Article 9, Section 1, and this is what it says, and this is what Speaker Daudt said in the letter to us. No money shall be paid out of the treasury of this state except in pursuance of an appropriation by law. But what this bill does, it says the state is indemnifying, but there's no appropriation. So this part of the bill doesn't meet the constitutional requirement. It puts the state on the hook of indemnification of all the folks who put garbage into the landfill, but does not provide an appropriation. The other section relating to the Freeway landfill simply doesn't make sense. It appropriates, there is an appropriation here, $4 million to the PCA and requires the PCA to begin engineering on cleaning up the landfill. Two big problems here. This is a federal Superfund site, federal. And the owner says there's no problem. The owner is not cooperating. Freeway landfill is a real problem. I have no question about it. It needs to be cleaned up. But the solution needs to be workable. This bill doesn't provide one. That's just two of the reasons, folks, this bill needs to have a no vote and some real consideration of problem solving, not putting up things that look good but don't work.
Discussion. Gentleman from St. Louis, Representative Metsa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I did have a chance to speak with Representative Fabian in regards to this briefly, and I think that we do have some conversations as the bill moves forward, and I feel comfortable that we'll continue to address the issue in a way that makes sense. But in talking with our county commissioners and other local folks up in St. Louis County and my colleagues here, we are concerned with the precedents that this sets with 16 landfills that are closed in our region that could be absent of funding should it move forward the way it is. And we want to make sure we're doing our part in stewardship. It's not often that I get up to support Representative Wagenius on all of our issues, but today I think on this issue, we do have reason to be concerned and look forward to working with Chair Fabian moving forward to address part of this, and along with Representative Roz Peterson and I believe Representative Wills. So Other than that, I will sit down here and keep it a little shorter than Gene.
Discussion. The gentleman from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Wagenius yield for a question?
She will yield. The gentleman from Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Wagenius, were you the author of the 1994-1995 freeway landfill bill?
The lady from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Yes, I was.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and if Representative Wagenius would continue to yield.
She will yield.
So when we see this map, we have a number of dots all over the map. And I think we did hear compelling testimony in committee of the haulers who've received the letters where they're having to pay. And I would assume that is a shock for folks if maybe it was their parents or even their grandparents that are receiving those letters. But they're receiving those letters because the landowner of the freeway landfill did not voluntarily enter into the program. And 109, I believe Mr. Speaker, Representative Wagenius, is it 109 landfills that have voluntarily entered into the program?
The lady from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Yes, it's 109, and that's why I handed out this map, because that shows where these landfills are.
The gentleman from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
And Mr. Speaker, and I don't know if I see Representative Scott on the floor, but yesterday in capital investment, those of you who are in the Capital Investment Committee, we actually had a bill, I think, requesting $11 million for one landfill in Anoka County. I think that was right, and we had testimony from the Pollution Control Agency there. So I think the concern, members, is indemnifying, and I understand the shock that this may be from the haulers. But that's the result of the landfill owner not voluntarily entering into the program. As many of these dots on the map have done. So in testimony we asked, will the freeway landfill get cleaned up? Will indemnifying the landowners clean up, not the landowners, but indemnifying the haulers who previously may have hauled waste to that facility, will this clean up the landfill? The answer was no, because you still have to get that permission from the landowner. So what happens with costs? And Representative Wagenius specifically mentioned that legal fees were not included back in 1994. And I want to go to the point about insurance litigation that happened. And we heard this in capital investment yesterday, that the money that came from the awards to go into the landfill program was not enough. It's not enough. And it isn't designated landfill to landfill, those insurance settlements. It went into the fund. And it's been used to manage, supposed to be used to manage all of these landfills in the future. Because one thing that is for certain is sooner or later, landfills leak. Eventually, landfills leak. And there's a cost to protect groundwater. So what we have here is a 30 to 40-year mess. And I understand and I empathize with the desire to try to find an answer for those haulers. But the answer means that we won't be able to manage these in the future because the cost will perpetually be there for litigation and other things than managing. The closed landfill program, Representative Scott was asking for money for the landfill in her district. We have an unfunded, even with the amount of money that's come in from litigation and from bonding and prior contributions, we don't have the money to cover all of the costs. And this is a big issue. So when we talk bonding or we talk appropriations, this is a mess that is not going to go away, whatever we do here. Minnesota provided leadership back in 1994 by providing a voluntary method. So we wouldn't be doing the hard regulation, the hard Superfund. And most of the Minnesota landfills have entered into that program, except one, this one. So we've got a problem, and that problem isn't going to go away. And the costs are going to continue to be there. And the cleanup costs, the management costs will continue to be there. This is not a solution, and it actually makes the problem worse.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Cornish.
Mr. Speaker and members, this is probably most I've talked all year, but I wanted to address one portion of the bill. Representative Fabian, I think you have a good bill here. There's parts of it you know that I would have shaved a little bit different, but probably like you would with my public safety bill. But at any rate, I wanted to tell you a David Dill story. Some of you newbies here don't remember David Dill on both sides here, but when I was on the committee with him, he would talk about start thinking like a constituent. I was a game warden and enforced a lot of the DNR laws for many years. Then I met David Dill, and he would suggest we change this, suggest we change that, and I'd fight him a little bit. And then he said, start thinking like a constituent. So together, I'm laying a framework for what I'm getting at. So together we worked on the uncased gun law. And we were working on it so you didn't have to carry a gun cased anymore if you're on an ATV or a truck or whatever, get down to the end of the drive and have to find somebody to give you a ride back and have to put your gun in the case. So while we were researching that, he found out that I wrote more tickets than any game warden in the state for the uncased gun. And we had quite a laugh about that. And he said, you're finally starting to think like a constituent. And I got to experience that once I got back out in the field to live under some of these regulations. Now, the sorry part about this is we talk about 1994, and then Representative Hansen, you talked about last year when it was a different makeup of the legislature. Well, you should think about that a little bit more, because instead of treating the DNR and the PCA and the Department of Commerce and everybody like God with godlike powers, and they know best with their best science, we got to start thinking like a constituent. In other words, this year I was kind of depressed during this meeting. In fact, there was some times I just wanted to gnaw my arm off sitting through some of that testimony. These people would come in, constituents or businessmen, and they were treated sometimes like, how do you have, why do you think you should be here? How can you give your opinion something above the DNR? One after another, these government agencies would come down and spew out their business and make them feel like they shouldn't even have been there, or they don't have a complaint, or how can you complain? The Chamber of Commerce was treated like the big evil chamber. They represent businesses, and they're not all big businesses. Representative Hornstein said something about these business owners making a wealthy profit. Well, what do you hope they make? We all hope they make a wealthy profit. What do you want them to do, lose money? So anyway, I just wish you would start thinking about constituents, not just the DNR and the PCA. They don't rule the world. Once in a while, we have to throw the lasso around the wild getaway pony, drag them back by the scruff of the neck and say, hey, listen to your constituents. They might have a good idea or two. So let's just remember when we have these hearings, these state agencies are wonderful. They have hardworking employees, but sometimes their science is just whatever. And it doesn't apply, and we have to make our own science. And that's why we end up writing bills sometimes, is because sometimes we actually got better ideas than the PCA or the DNR. So anyway, that's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson L.
Mr. Speaker, members, I want to raise a constitutional question with this bill. And by background, when I chaired one of the Education Finance Committees a number of years ago, I had some language in the bill And the governor attempted to veto that language. You know, in a finance bill, you can't veto the language. And so the legal question, there was a lawsuit brought by the Interfaculty Organization. They represented the state universities at the time. Since then, they would be a part of the MnSCU system, but they were a separate system at the time. And there was a major lawsuit over a number of vetoes. And the governor at the time claimed that I had, because it was a House position, and I was the chief author of the funding bill, that I had deliberately crafted the bill in the way to make it veto-proof. And I had in my office during that period 2 lawyers, one from each side, and I had to swear that I had to do a deposition, I guess is the way you'd put it, that I had not attempted to make it veto-proof. Now, I did prevail because I was able to show that that was kind of boilerplate language from previous bills that had been passed both by Republican chairs and Democratic chairs, and that I hadn't attempted to make it veto-proof. But on the face of it, it looks like that may be something that some would look at this bill and say, with all of that language in there, and if the governor were to attempt to veto it, you might have that constitutional question, because that was the question that the governor at the time raised about a bill that he thought had been put together to make it veto-proof. When I look at this one, all that pure language that's in the bill, and we all know that's one way to, one, get things up into conference committee, and secondly, to get something that you want passed if you can put it into a must-do bill. And I think that, I guess I'm just trying to say that maybe a bit of a warning here, that you may have problems with all that language. You really should have had a separate policy bill. It's a different question if you've got language in there that's supporting an appropriation. But if it's perceived, and if it were to end up in courts as an attempt to make it veto-proof, you could have some very major legal questions. So I just point that out as people consider their vote on the bill. There are a variety of reasons where I'm going to be a no vote, but the constitutional question, I think, in my mind, is an important one, and just one more reason why I'm going to be a no vote.
The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And Representative Cornish, I like to agree with you, and I agree with you that it's important to listen to our constituents. And I just want to identify a few projects in my area that are constituent-based. One is in Madison Lake, which is in Representative Cornish's district, and I know a number of folks who live on that lake, and that lake has really been dealing with phosphorus in the lake and some runoff from with associated farmers, and they've been working hard. They have a strong lake association.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. Mr. Speaker, can you please wrap the gavel and bring the chamber to attention? It's kind of noisy here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but that was a little too loud. Anyway, it's getting later in the evening, but I want to take you back to Madison Lake, which is really a nice place. It's a lake about 5-10 miles outside of Mankato, and I just happen to know a lot of people that live on that lake, enjoy a lake that needs a little work. And the people who are doing the work on that lake is a very strong lake association. But they're not doing it alone. And they have found a great deal of support from the local Soil and Water Conservation District to work with area farmers, to deal with some runoff, to test the water. They've got a full gamut of activities going, and I think they're making some progress. But I think everyone in that very strong lake association would agree that they couldn't do it without the support of the Soil and Water Conservation District. And when I talk to my friends who are involved there, they talk about the ability of that district to sit down at the classic thing, sit down at the kitchen table with farmers and lake owners, bring them together, work together to develop a bottoms-up approach to improve a lake that's really important to the recreational area in the Mankato area. I think of the Le Sueur watershed. if you saw the Le Sueur watershed, there are many banks that are taller than this wall, more than 100 feet high, that it get eroded from the bottom, and then that silt falls into the river and eventually makes its way into the Minnesota River. It's threatening some homes in that watershed. The Legislative Water Commission toured this area last summer, and we saw it firsthand. And a lot of us are living with that right now. And there's a group of landowners and associated people working to figure out how to best deal with that. Progress is being made, again, because of local soil and water conservation district assistance, helping people work together from a bottoms-up approach to improve water quality right in where the bend of the river area is, where a lot of water coming into the Minnesota River. And I've mentioned it before, but for new members, the 7 Mile Creek project in Nicollet County is really a point of pride for us. It's been a project that's been worked on for years. And it's, again, a situation, it's not a top-down approach, it's a bottoms-up approach. It's landowners working together. These are landowners who have owned these farms, a lot of 100-year farms, a lot of 150-year farms. These are well-established farmers who are taking the lead, working together to solve some water quality issues in that creek. Again, they do it with the assistance of the local Soil and Water Conservation District. And that's why I'm concerned about this bill. Bowser, when they testified, they said they're concerned about the soil and water conservation districts to provide that landowner assistance that is so critical if we're going to solve water quality problems, certainly in my part of the state. And I'm going to just suggest, and I hope this is the last time I have to make this a suggestion. But I'm going to suggest that an oversized tax cut and the idea of funding roads using the general fund is impacting, this is an example of what it's impacting. A lot of times we talk vaguely about what's the impact of that. It will impact it because of the cut to the soil and water conservation districts, the ability for them to work with local landowners. I'm really proud that Governor Dayton has set out a very appropriately ambitious goal of reducing by 25% the number of impaired waters in Minnesota by 2025. And I'm also impressed with his approach to doing that by seeing it as a bottom-up approach. If we're going to achieve that, and it's a tough goal to achieve, it's going to take a lot of people working together to effectively do that. We're going to need those soil and water conservation districts to help our landowners across the state take on these projects, to do it well, make them effective, have an impact, so that Minnesotans across the state want cleaner water. This is central to our ability to get there. The cut in this bill to the soil and water conservation districts will impact and deter and will limit the ability to do that well moving forward. That's why one of the reasons I'm voting against this bill. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Majority Leader Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to see that your gavel has been replaced. I want to thank Representative Fabian for a job well done on this bill. I think you did a really good job of balancing it's not always easy to balance an environmental bill, but you've done a good job of balancing protecting the environment, but also looking out for the interests of small business owners and landowners and farmers. Some of the things that I particularly like in the bill is that it brings much needed transparency to the MPCA on where and how they spend their money. That's something that I've heard a lot about as I've gone throughout the state. It also reforms the permitting process of the DNR and MPCA. And Representative Fabian, I know you've been working on the permitting process and streamlining that and making sure that these agencies don't overstep their authority. And I think that's something that we can all be proud of. And as stewards of the state, we need to make sure that our government agencies are doing what they should be doing, but doing so without overstepping their bounds. And it also reforms the makeup of the EQB board. So thank you for all your work on this. And members, I would encourage a green vote.
The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just a few things that I want to respond to here. Representative Johnson C., I agree with you. The SWCDs do some really good work. Our SWCD official in Roseau is a former student of mine and a good friend of mine. we are getting money for them in other places. We're just not coming through our budget this time. Representative Wagenius raised some issues with regards to the language in the bill. And I need to make a few corrections. Or she said that, you know, it's interesting the rhetoric now that's behind a permit. It's now being referred to as a permit to pollute. I find that troubling at best. The comment made that permittees are going to be able to write their own permits. Members, that's stuff that's going on right now within the agencies. It's not uncommon for the agency to sit down with a proposer, particularly in these very, very large projects, these very complicated ones, so that they can work together. I mean, I hear a lot about we need to work together, we need to work together. Well, in this case here, that's what they do. But they do not get to write their permit. They get to write a draft of the permit. And then after that is done, then is when it has to go through a determination of adequacy and completeness with the responsible government unit. And from there, that's when they start all of the things with regards to posting it for public notice, the possibility of contested case hearings, and then moving on from there into the next steps and possibly even the permit being granted or the permit not being granted. And the part about the proposer having the data remain private, in current statute, it's right there. It's public. Even if they're preparing their draft permit, it's public. In the bill, if you look on page 105 and 105.23, a preliminary draft environmental impact statement prepared by the project proposer and submitted to the responsible government shall identify or include as an appendix all studies and other sources of information used to substantiate the analysis contained in the preliminary draft environmental impact statement. I know it's kind of technical, but that's the law. The responsible government unit shall require additional studies if needed and obtain from the project proposer all additional studies and information necessary for the responsible government unit to perform its responsibility to review, modify, and determine the completeness and adequacy of the environmental impact statement. Also, there were some comments made about the wetland replacement stuff. I've worked very closely with some different counties on this issue. I know it's a sensitive issue. I've committed to working through this. You've heard me in committee say this. And one of the last things that we did to change the bill, first of all, on a permit to mine, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources has sole authority on a wetland plan. And it says right in the bill that they may approve a wetland replacement plan. It doesn't say that they must. And the wetland plan applications have to be available for public comment, and they have to be submitted to the local government units. So the other part about if you're impacted and you're adjacent to, you know, I think that that's something that we can continue to work on. But I also believe that if something is going on in St. Louis County, I'm not exactly sure why somebody who lives in Nevada should be able to have a lot of input on that stuff. So what we're trying to do is to reform this and make it work better for everybody. And as a footnote to that, members, some of you have heard me express my frustration with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. The changes that we have made in this bill through this process have come from listening to MPCA testify in committee, either here in the House or across the street. MPCA is unwilling to meet with myself and the people who are interested in streamlining the permitting process. They have refused to, quote, as they say, negotiate. I'm not interested in negotiating. I just want to find out what can we do to accomplish some of these goals. And it's a pretty sad commentary on the way the Pollution Control Agency works when they refuse to meet to work on these things. You know, one of the things that comes out too is we've got some language in here on unadopted rules and using guidance documents to create, to put those into permits for our demo landfills in rural Minnesota. And they say, oh no, we don't do that, we don't do that. Well, in the fiscal note for House File 1291, which is my permitting reform bill, remember they said they don't use guidance for permits. In the fiscal note it says, Article 1, Section 4, fiscal impact to put all bulletins, guides, and references into permitting through the rulemaking process. They're admitting right here that they're using guidance documents for their permits. And that's 2 different times in this document. Members, I just want things to work in Minnesota. I want them to go smoothly. We like clean water. We like clean land. We like clean air. And somehow the suggestion that just because the Chamber of Commerce is involved, I find that really disturbing. So you're going to tell me that the members of the Chamber of Commerce in the city of Warroad, Minnesota, on the shores of Lake of the Woods, don't care about clean water and the water that's being put into the system through their sewage treatment facilities? Are you kidding me? You know, we got to cut these places a break a little bit once in a while and accept the fact that the mining industry is trying to do some good work. The things that they're proposing with regards to Polymet in terms of cleaning up the water and discharging and stuff is unbelievably good. But we've taken the notion that, I mean, just in the verbiage, a permit to pollute. We've really come to a bad place, in my opinion. I also want to comment on the freeway landfill. I know that this is a very, very hot issue. I think Representative Peterson told me, you could just nod your head, but I think she told me that 65% of the members in this body, 62, excuse me, are impacted by what's going on at Freeway. This is an issue that's been dragging on for 20 plus years. And Representative Wagenius, I compliment you on your closed landfill legislation that you did a long time ago. But I have a great deal of frustration, a lot of questions with regards to what has the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency been doing with regards to this issue. And please explain to me why someone should have to be subjected to double jeopardy. These people have settled their claims. The insurance companies paid. And it's not just the haulers, members. It's the hospitals, it's the schools, it's the cities. All of these PRPs, they're called, potentially responsible parties, are going to be subjected to double jeopardy. Now, I know that it's a complicated system or situation, but I believe that if the MPCA had been doing a better job of managing this, we wouldn't be where we are today. This should have been in the closed landfill fund cleanup a long time ago. So, members, I'm going to close by just going through just a few things that are in this bill. And we've put a lot of work into this. You know, I'm willing to accept criticism, obviously, but if you're going to vote for this bill or vote against this bill, this is what you're voting for or against. Different air and water monitoring programs over at PCA. Monitoring for harmful pollutants. Programs at the PCA dealing with chemicals that are harmful, potentially harmful to children and babies. We're continuing that. We're not stopping these programs. We're continuing them. We're doing biomonitoring of perfluorochemicals in eastern and metropolitan communities, something that was started a number of years ago. We're trying to help cities that are struggling with the costs of dealing with wastewater treatment facilities. There's grants for counties in rural Minnesota and metro counties that have, I just got it, okay? Everybody in my committee knows what this means. I just got this signal, so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. So anyway, you know, I mentioned the leaking tanks. We're doing that. The St. Louis River, the administration of the cleanup up there, we're doing that. Freeway landfill, emission reduction activities at PCA, the thing for the shooting sports, recycling grants to cities, SCORE grants for counties, feedlot program. We're emphasizing transparency and accountability. Scopes on muzzle loaders. What a great deal. Invasive species research and control. Technical support and money for SWCDs. Groundwater analysis. Starry stonewort at Lake Coronas. Firefighting. Okay? Timber and forest products. And with that, I ask for a green vote. Amen. Thank you, members, and amen. Thank you, Glenn.
The clerk will take the roll.
Point of personal privilege.
Representative Bly. Not during a roll call, Representative Bly. Yes, I can. Clerk will close the roll. There being 80 ayes and 53 nays, the bill as amended is passed and its title agreed to.